Above the senior level, being the person who's effective at getting things done and breaking the rules is essentially a job requirement. And you have to show that in your interviews. We're going to tell you some real stories from real interviews and real interviewers to demonstrate this. All of these stories involve candidates or interviewers who ended up with outcomes that wouldn't be available to them if they don't break the rules. The point of this lesson is not to be a jerk. The point is to show interviewers you're comfortable saying no to the rules. As long as you back it up in the interview by showing real skills, they are going to respect that, and they'll actually respect you more because of you saying no. By the way, these stories are not limited just to behavioral interviews. There's a technical round described, and we chose to include it because it highlights the point of rule breaking so well. And not every engineer telling these stories is senior, actually. The benefits of rule breaking seem to be seen across the levels. In part, this is super intuitive, in part because the candidate's going to be remembered. And as we'll discuss, some candidates actually have a more important requirement to do things just to stand out in their interview. Rule number 1, when a company asks you to do a coding exercise, do the coding exercise. The candidate broke rule number 1 because he was interviewing at Twitter back in the early IPO days, pre-Elon, back when Twitter was considered a pretty cool place to work by engineers. Now, if he hadn't broken the rules, he wouldn't have gotten not only the offer, but an up level. An up level is when you get an offer above your target level. This is so rare in my career. After seeing thousands of engineering offers, I've probably seen this less than 10 times. So here's the anecdote told from the perspective of the candidate. So I'm at the office, headquarters, downtown San Francisco, Twitter, final round interview. I'm in an office with one other engineer. And, he kind of casually says, so here's this thing I want you to do. It's a coding problem. Just, go ahead and whiteboard it. And I had no idea what it was. I have a non-traditional background. And so I basically told him, I don't even know what that thing is. And I was really open about it. So I told him, and I remember what I said. I was like, I could do that, but it'd probably be a waste of time. Or I could show you what I do. Luckily, he was open to it. And I proceeded to spend the rest of the interview time whiteboarding everything I know about video. At that time, Twitter was really looking to beef up their video technology. The engineer interviewing me was really excited throughout my presentation. He asked a ton of questions. And by the end, he was basically chomping at the bit. Not only did I get the offer, but they up-leveled me. Rule number 2, never interrupt your interviewer. This one is a little bit different because it doesn't come from a candidate giving a story, but rather an interviewer who's super senior. He's been ahead of machine learning. And this is from his perspective after doing a ton of interviews, what he thinks. He says, you have to learn the skill of interrupting people, but just once in a 1-hour conversation. You have to make them feel interrupted, but in a way they appreciate. Easiest use case for this is when you can save them time. The exact words to say are, I'm sorry to interrupt. To use our time effectively, I want you to know blank. Let's just say they were going down a rabbit hole that you could prevent them from going down. They will appreciate that. Rule number 3, when you introduce yourself, when you give your personal pitch, describe your career. Start with your education, then your first job, and work all the way up chronologically until your current position. Stick almost entirely to work-related details. You can mention hobbies, but even that should be done with caution. Rule number 3 is how most candidates live by. For juniors especially, living by rule number 3 can be more dangerous than safe. Quick sidebar about junior engineers. For junior engineers, especially ones trying to get their foot in the door, their first job in tech, a strong argument can be made that it's really important for you to do something just for the reason of standing out from the other pool of candidates in order to be remembered. You are a face in a mass group of dozens of engineers that you're competing against. It's counterintuitive because traditional advice is, don't do anything to rock the boat or do anything to be too weird. But let me break this down and actually bring you across so you could see how this is actually in reality. So junior and mid-level engineers in the job market, they're basically hired by the same requirement. This is outside of the part of the stack you work on, like front end, back end, that kind of thing. Junior and mid-level engineers are all focused on heads down engineering work. There are no distinct archetypes. And that's not a knock against mid-level and juniors. It's simply a fact. At most companies, they're the boots on the ground doing most of the ground level work in engineering orgs. Somewhere above the senior level, these distinct archetypes tend to emerge. Now, in that scenario, they don't have to do things to stand out because those distinct archetypal factors will be there and that will help them stand out. But as you can see, juniors and mids, they don't have that available to them yet. They need to do something else to be memorable. So again, if you're looking to get your foot in the door, there's more you have to do to be memorable. And if you have a non-traditional background and you're looking to get your foot in the door, there's even more you have to do to be memorable. The best place to stand out to be remembered is in your pitch. And this candidate that tells this story, they broke this rule. And not only that, they say that this was one of the main reasons they got hired at LinkedIn for their foot in the door job. They talked to the people that interviewed them after they were hired, and they said, that story you told us, out of all the candidates we've ever talked to, we remember you because of that crazy story. Here's the story. The candidate's asked, tell me about yourself. And this is what he says. Back when I was in college, I had to buy a car to get to one of my off-campus jobs. I end up buying this Saab for like $400 or $500. I remember when I told my dad, he was like, did it come with all four wheels? The car actually worked, got me from A to B, until one day it actually stopped working. So I, investigated, and it basically just seemed like the car was a lemon. So I called the original owner to tell him exactly that. And he starts to laugh. I was confused until he said, did you notice the floor mats were slipping onto the clutch pedal? And I went out and I tried it, and they actually were. So if that happens, then the engine can't crank because you can't pull the clutch totally down. So I had to get new floor mats. I go on eBay and it's way out of my price range. I mean, way out of my price range. For a college student at the time, I couldn't afford $300 or $250. It was almost more than half of what I paid for the car. So I got an idea. So I found somebody on Craigslist selling the exact same car, and I asked him to meet me at a local coffee shop. I come out, I hand him a cup of coffee. I say, look, man, I'm not trying to waste your time, but I'm not here to buy your car. I really want to measure the floor mats. He said, sure, why not? So I got out a big piece of cardboard that I brought, and I traced the outline on the piece of cardboard from the floor mat. I go back to my dorm room and get some old carpet because I worked in maintenance during the summers too. So I lay down the carpet right in the cardboard, and I cut it in the shape that I got traced out in the cardboard. And what do you know? It's a perfect fit. My problem is solved. Not only that, but it's solved for like 15 times less than I would have paid if I had bought it off Craigslist. So the reason that I tell you the story is because that is how I approach all problems, not just software development. I don't stop at the first obstacle, the second obstacle, the fifth obstacle. Sooner or later, I'm going to solve that problem, no matter what it takes. Here's the takeaway from those stories. Living safely is dangerous. That's an idea often attributed to the existentialist philosopher Nietzsche, and it applies really well to interviewing. Don't be afraid to break the rules. You can end up with an outcome that's more optimal and not available to those who live too safely.